Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you, good citizen. Welcome to the show, which technically speaking, folks, this is not a podcast episode. This is something different, okay? If you remember here recently, Stanley County Ag Center Arena, we had the people gather there to hold a public forum on July 24th, 2025. This was a public meeting in which I presented some information to the people for their review and for their reception. This information had everything to do with your county school boards and the future of your schools. Now, this was a presentation that lasted about 20 minutes. We had a few words from people that we invited to speak and be present there. But then we heard from the people of Stanley County, those who came to the forum, which of course, that's what all of this is about, folks, to hear from you, the people of Stanley County, and get your thoughts on what the Stanley County School Board's been doing behind your back and what they have planned for your communities and for your schools. Now, at this forum, some people knew who I was. Many people did not. And if you're watching this video, you may be asking the same thing. Who is this guy, right? Well, allow me to introduce myself. My name's Bill Schaefer. And those of you who know me from my podcast, the Last Stand podcast with Wild Bill, I am Wild Bill of the Wild Bill fame. I followed politics for almost all of my life, folks. And I began paying attention to politics in this country and what our government was doing somewhere around the age of 12. And, I think I was in my teens when I walked to the Republican Party headquarters in town and asked about a guy named Reagan and what he stood for. So, throughout my life, folks, I've always been interested in the goings-on of our government. And as time went by, I also became very interested in our American history, our principles, our heritage, our values, which of course goes right into our culture. And I'll tell you, culture affects more than we might think, folks. But I became interested in all of those things from a very early age. I moved to Albemarle in 2016, and I made it my home. But as I continued to watch national politics, I heard from more people who were talking about the local politics in the county and what happens right here down on the ground in the good old USA. And I really got a taste for all of that during the COVID years, where we saw firsthand what our local schools and our school boards were doing to our kids. And it became clear to me that if we're going to pay attention to our national politics, we must understand and pay attention to our local politics and local governments, because that's where everything begins, folks. Everything begins at the local level, with the people at the local level. And ironically, I found out, it's also here at the local level where things are less understood, or so it would seem, and where not a lot of people know what's going on behind your backs and how your government entities work and how they're supposed to work. Too many people don't know what goes on behind their backs and how those things can affect your life, your kids' lives, your money, and the directions that your towns and cities take with regard to a great many things. So, I began to pay attention to our school boards and our schools. And it became clear to me that if we're going to restore a lot of our values and principles here in this country, and in our states, in our counties, we needed a restoration at our schools, in our schools, but we also needed accountability and transparency from our local school boards. As you may have seen, all across the country, we see school boards that operate in the most tyrannical of ways, and that has to change. So that's what I and others tried to do on July 24th to bring this information to the people. If you watch the video, we have a Facebook page, Reclaiming Greatness in Stanley County. if you watch that video, it's kind of hard to watch, and that's, I'm not blaming anybody. We have very limited resources in being able to record public forums and things like that, and the sound isn't that great, and you don't get to see everything. So I wanted to create this video to be able to present that information to you, to present what we brought on July 24th to you here in a video. So, thanks for tuning in to this video. What you're going to be watching is a presentation regarding our schools and what our school board's doing in Stanley County, again, behind your backs and without your knowledge, without your input, and with your hard-earned money, right? It's a little lengthy, but bear with me, folks. There's a lot of information here. So, without any further delay, without any further ado, let's get on with this thing here. So, good people of Stanley County, let the reasons for this presentation be stated. Previous and present Stanley County school boards have taken your hard-earned tax money and wasted it over the years and continue to do so today. They've wasted your money, demanded more of it, kept you in the dark about it, and have endeavored to keep you silent about it in pursuit of an education system that doesn't work for you, your communities, or your children. They've violated rules and procedures in order to achieve their ends, both personal and according to an objective goal, and have used the tools of government in order to keep the people out of the process while holding the public to ridiculous rules of limited input, and in one case, they even restricted public input altogether. The board, previous and current, has allowed for the decay of our community school system, leading the people to a false narrative that leads us to their objective of consolidation of schools and claiming that it's the only way forward in Stanley County. They've done all this behind the backs of the people that they claim to represent. Now, it's our belief that the people of Stanley County have always wanted their community schools, and they wanted them to thrive because instinctively, they know, the people know, that community schools are better for the communities, the administration, teachers, families, and ultimately, the student. Now, I called this forum that we had on July 24th to do the following: inform you and to identify the problems that we're facing and to make the case for what I and others believe in terms of community-based school systems, and to offer what we believe are the beginnings of solutions to the issues of our school system. But more importantly, we've gathered here and in this video so that we can hear your voice on social media, to give you the opportunity to speak to this issue and to convey your ideas, your beliefs, and your desires and your questions, and also to issue a call to action from the people of Stanley County. Because in the end, folks, it's the people who determine the direction that their counties move in, okay? Now, I love my coffee. You'll all remember back in 2012 that Ridgecrest Elementary School was shut down, okay? Given the growth of that end of the county at the time, this came as a surprise to a lot of people in the community and across the county. And since then, through a few districting changes and other school closures, over the years, the people all over the county, over many years, have asked, why did they shut down Ridgecrest School? And when are they going to reopen it? People have been asking that question since it closed. When are they going to reopen Ridgecrest? Well, I'll tell you, if the current Stanley County Board of Education has their way, folks, never is the answer to that question. It came to my attention pretty early in this year that the current majority on this board, and I know who they are, and I'll tell you who they are, these people have designs on making Ridgecrest Elementary School a sports center of some kind. Okay? Now, this was never even brought up to the people. It was just decided upon by this board that this is what they want to have happen, whether they figure out this so-called deed issue that they talk about or not, right? So, since the closing of this school, and specifically in this year, the board majority has effected redistricting plans, which will have a direct effect on communities, teachers, families, and students. Now, this move was also part of a larger scheme, and that scheme is the consolidation of the Stanley County schools into what I have referred to as super schools. Now, this effort would begin with your high schools, and eventually this would be affected to your middle schools and then your elementary schools. Folks, this would effectively decimate your communities and ultimately the state of education in Stanley County. And again, they've made these decisions in secret, behind your backs, until the efforts of specific individuals in the county forced these decisions and all of this out into the open. Now, how do we know that they've been operating in secret, folks? Well, I'll give you an example. On December 19th in 2024, the Stanley County Schools Facilities Committee held a committee meeting at 11 a.m. on December 19th in 2024. Megan Almond, who hadn't been elected officially yet, was also there. The board entered into a closed session meeting approximately 1 hour after they began. Now, this was for the purpose of discussing student matters in accordance with North Carolina general statutes, okay? Now, it was during this meeting that redistricting efforts were discussed in violation of the statute regarding closed session topics of discussion. Now, if you remember in my statements in like the March or April school board meetings, I called the school board out for holding these secret meetings whereby decisions are made without the public knowledge and without benefit of their input. This was also addressed by Megan Allman and Carla Poplin in subsequent public school board meetings. But this kind of thing was taking place regularly and consistently. The first recorded official minutes of the December 19th meeting showed a discussion of school structures, HVAC bids, matters that were pertaining to roofing projects. And after these things were discussed, that's when they decided to go into closed session. Okay, now those closed session meeting minutes are never out there for the public review. Now, in actuality, here's what happened. The closed session was held under the guise of student matters as recorded. However, no discussion of specific student matters took place, folks. The discussion involving the redistricting and consolidation of our schools did take place during this closed session, and our suspicions were confirmed when the Board of Education was forced to resubmit that record for public review. That was made effective on March 4th, 2025, and I think it came out shortly thereafter. Now, it must be noted that they had a demographer there, okay? The demographer at this meeting had assessed at the time that the current schools locations in our county are strategically well placed, if not completely optimal, okay? They're in very good positions, and the placement of our schools is very good, okay? But it was also discovered that the committee members there had instructed this demographer to delete Ridgecrest from any assessment in redistricting efforts, as they had already made up their minds as to which scenario they were going to choose, and they've already made up their minds as to what they want to do with Ridgecrest. Again, the public was completely unaware of this, and you are never given the opportunity to opine or to convey your thoughts on yet another redistricting effort and consolidation effort. This is the sort of thing that goes on with the majority members of this board today, folks. And throughout the years, as we have asked and demanded that our community-based schools, to include our city schools, like the ones in Albemarle, be maintained and serviced and taken care of, the boards have allowed them to deteriorate, using Band-Aids over the years, claiming that they just don't have the money and the county commissioners don't release tax revenue to maintain our schools effectively. And yet, over the years, the Board of Education has had the funds to acquire properties, structures in properties, to include this new central office that they have. They've done all this without your input and without your knowledge. And in fact, you know, it always seems to be that we never know what they're doing until after it's done, folks. And today they're working for more of the same with regard to plans to consolidate your schools, starting with your high schools into 1 or 2 high schools, which of course will put the taxpayer on the hook for millions of dollars for high schools that are going to jam your kids like Spam in a can to the tune of 1,500 or more students into one school alone. Now, it must be said, from my perspective, with regard to the claim that the county commissioners don't fund our school system adequately, you'll see in the slides that I have here that the county commissioners have actually increased the operating cost budget by 38%. This is almost $5 million over a 5-year period starting in 2021. Now, as far as the central office acquisition is concerned, that's a done deal, folks, okay? They purchased it using ESSER funds from the COVID years and also from your tax money, which all of it's tax money, okay? The difference between the two pots of money here is that taxpayer money in ESSER funds is taxpayer money that's spread out, and brought to you by your federal government. The money that they use from their capital funds is money that you paid into those funds, okay? So it's all tax money, and part of your specific tax money in these funds for the county, this is what they use to pay for this new central office. Now, like I said, it's a done deal, all right? The school system's central office fully relocated to this new office building in April of 2025. This was a building that they had actually purchased in 2024, but you didn't know about it. Now, I had a study conducted, and a study was conducted by the county, Andy Lucas, and it was found to show that the school system wouldn't save any lease or rent money as a result of relocating to this new central office building, given that the county commissioners had clearly held the school system financially harmless for their annual rent obligation at the Commons since 2003. So the whole argument that, they were paying rent and this new office building will allow them to be rent-free, it's bogus, folks, okay? And a lot of people in the county, myself included, really question the wisdom behind acquiring this new central office. The county had always reimbursed this rent money that the board was paying at the Commons since 2003, folks, and over 5 years, that's about $445,000. So the question becomes, how was that money spent? So, if from my perspective, it's not about saving money, folks. This school board has demonstrated its willingness to spend your money on things that have nothing to do with fiscal responsibility or saving the taxpayer dollar or advancing the cause of effective education. Now, in 2012, there was also another school that was shut down, North Albemarle Elementary School. Now, a cursory review of the statistics for that school, it closed in 2012, and the reason that the school board at the time gave for closing that school was declining enrollment. Yeah, that's right. And if you pay attention here and you continue watching, you'll see that becomes a trend here, okay? If your goal is to consolidate all of your schools, yeah, sure, they'll close your school down and they'll say declining enrollment, right? Well, we're facing overcrowding these days, so, take that with a grain of salt, right? Now, it must be noted that it appears that the numbers in terms of academics were considerably lower in this school, in North Albemarle Elementary. Some people may have theories on why this was, inner city type reasons. I disagree with that theory and those theories. I've looked at study after study, folks. Grauer School studies out of California, the Small School Coalition studies, Harvard studies. I have looked at a lot of studies, and some of the woke reasons that they give for inner city schools doing poorly, I don't buy into it. I think the priorities and attention to our city schools here in Albemarle, I think those priorities and the attention that these schools got were screwed up enough as it was, and it showed in the numbers. But keep North Albemarle Elementary and your city schools in mind, folks, because we're going to get back to that one of these days, okay? Moving right along here. The Stanley County Board of Education voted to consolidate this school with other elementary schools in the district as part of a larger plan to address the issue of declining student numbers. Now, this school board in 2025 is going to try and use this reason of declining enrollment numbers to continue their work of consolidating your schools, folks. And I believe that one of the next schools that's going to be cut is Millingport Elementary. Now, word on the street now is that the board at the time was looking to turn North Albemarle School into a central office location. How about that, huh? Turns out that they never got into that building. And, you know, I haven't really dug into that issue. I just haven't had the time to really dig into that. But it wouldn't surprise me if that's why they closed that school down, so that they could have an office. You know, that's what they've been trying to do for years, is to get their own place for whatever reason, right? But declining enrollment, I don't know about that, okay? Now, if there's something to learn here from that example and from what they're doing today, it's that these school boards, both past and present, continue to do what's in their self-interest, not the schools, okay? And while funding is a real concern, and we always seem to be engaged in a balancing act with our money, it would seem that the short-sightedness and the incompetence of school boards at the time completely upended the lives of children in Albemarle by closing down that school. And it seems to me that the tunnel vision, the self-interest, the short-sightedness, the incompetence of one school board is inherited by subsequent school boards, you know, in a lot of ways. And you and your kids are the ones that have to live with the decision that your school board makes, you know. And every time they make a stupid decision, it's all about trying to save money, right? We're trying to save money. It's not about saving money, folks. It's simply just rearranging the money problems that we have, okay? It's costing you more for all of the unintended consequences that these school boards create. The consequences and the costs to doing the things that they do, you know, these problems are problems that the taxpayer has to deal with. And all of these consequences and costs and problems, they just get moved around, okay? It's not about saving money. And every time we look at the numbers and the amount of money that these school boards spend, the question remains, where did all the money go? Well, with the issues that we have today, folks, it sure seems that a lot of money didn't go to the schools. It didn't go to the buses. It didn't go to the teachers. It didn't go to your communities. And in large part, a lot of money went to property boondoggles and Band-Aids to fix your schools, right? And they're fixing to do it again. Now, in study after study, I and others have learned what we already know. Super schools are not good for your communities, and they're certainly detrimental to your kids. The data shows that super school kids and their communities experience everything from disciplinary problems to a lack of transparency with your school boards, to less parental oversight and input, less accountability, safety issues, and even outright indoctrination is associated with your super school models. Test scores and actual retention of knowledge suffers. Student-to-teacher ratios make it nearly impossible for teachers to educate their students effectively. Logistical problems become more pronounced, and maintenance costs don't decrease, folks, they increase. Busing issues and the cost and maintenance of the fleet become an issue. All these issues become real problems for the county. Now, this Board of Education would have you believe that the super school consolidation provides for better education and allows for opportunities like trade programs in your schools. I'm telling you, folks, from my perspective here, after reviewing study after study about super schools versus your smaller community schools, the juice is not worth the squeeze here, okay? And as far as any trades programs or CTE programs are concerned, I believe that with the right leadership on our school boards, we could provide trade programs to our existing high schools, okay? But we need to bring them back from the structural dead first, and we need to ensure that our community schools survive. Now, We know that community-based school systems are more successful in virtually every category that means anything to you, your community, your schools, your families, teachers, and ultimately the student, folks. And aside from the studies that substantiate this claim, let's just look at one of the schools that the Stanley County Board of Education shut down, claiming declining enrollment for doing so, as we're now faced with overcrowding issues today. Let's talk about Ridgecrest. At the time of its closure, Ridgecrest served approximately 211 students K through 6. But according to the Public School Review studies, these numbers fluctuated since its opening in 1998. We had as many as 355 students attending in 2001 alone. The average student-to-teacher ratio of 13-1 in 2012 was recorded lower than the North Carolina state level of 15-1. But according to this study, we had as many as 22 teachers serving in 2008. By the time of its closure in 2012, we had a total of 16 committed teachers. Now, here's where the numbers mean something for you and your kids. The percentage of students achieving proficiency in math was 85 to 89%, which was higher than the North Carolina state average of 82%. The percentage of students achieving proficiency in reading and language arts was 70 to 74%, which was approximately equal to the North Carolina state average of 73%. Now, this was an exceptional school, folks, that yielded exceptional results. The people living in the Ridgecrest community overwhelmingly reported to me that when Ridgecrest students were around, you immediately knew who they were. They were well-disciplined, they were well-behaved, they were intelligent, model students, aspiring future leaders in their communities and their schools. Now, this sort of information substantiates numerous studies and the research findings to date on the impact of community schools, which are, among others, improved academic performances. Community school students show significant improvement in academic achievements, attendance records, and graduation rates compared to students in your traditional larger public school settings. You have increased communication and engagement improvements. Families show increased stability in communication and involvement with their teachers after entering community school settings. And over time, schools adopting community school frameworks show improved communications among teachers, caregivers, school administrators, and parents, which is the most important thing here. You have improved attitudes about your schools. Community school programs are linked to positive attitudes about school, and an increase in academic confidence for elementary and middle school students are well noted in these studies. You have improved health for your students. Students show significant declines in depression, and we have significant improvements in overall self-esteem with these students. Ridgecrest Elementary School exemplified these findings, folks. We know that community-based school systems, not super schools, are beneficial to the community, the families, the teachers, and ultimately the student. But here we are, seemingly on a course for consolidation, for a school system that you never wanted in the first place, and a school system that 4 of your board members on this school board have determined without your input and without your voice. And this is the most egregious thing of this to me. You know, when the people have attended public meetings to voice their concerns, this board chooses to chastise those of us who don't align with their objectives. We've had board members tell us that we're not right. And if you remember the busing issues that we had, and still have, quite frankly, we've had board members in the past that have wagged their fingers at the people and have the audacity to bark at our people, saying things like, well, what do you want us to do about it? You know, what's your solution? You know, and I'm listening to this and I'm like, well, Jack Wagon, that's why we elected you. Okay, that's why we elected you to the school board, to figure out these problems and to serve the needs of the students in Stanley County, you know? And as far as this board goes, chastising our people who spoke in June, by the way, folks, I'm telling you, any government official that treats the people as an annoyance and as an afterthought to everything that they do is unjust and un-American. You have a right to know, folks, and you have a right to determine your destinies. And this board majority have worked in opposition to all of these concepts. And that's why a lot of people, simply throw up their hands and stop coming to these public meetings. And to me, this is the most unfortunate consequence of the kind of shenanigans that your school boards pull. And in the case of this school board, I think it's a welcome consequence. Now, what's the solutions? Well, look, folks, this isn't just about Ridgecrest School. It's about all of our schools. And no one person has all of the answers, okay? I don't have all the answers. But I and others, and many of you, believe that a course correction is needed here. Among the many suggested solutions that we could talk about, from my perspective, solutions and efforts should be courses of action that definitively puts us on a course to the restoration of our community-based school systems, courses of action that provide for physical assessments that account for categories of systems and structures that are in need of repair and replacement. And then we need to have a prioritization of attention, categories and their priority level as it relates to what system or structure requires the most urgent attention, right on down to the preventative repair or replacement priorities for less than urgent needs. I'm talking about everything from life support to administration. We need to talk about the cost of repair and replacement for our systems and structures in our community-based schools, accounting for every school in each grade range. We need assessments that give us the cost, the real cost of restoration efforts. We need to review the vetting and hiring of contract procedures and to determine, our cost-benefit ratios and our product reliability and longevity ratios. And we need to think about how just simple Band-Aids to a structural problem can affect future costs of materials and repairs to the taxpayer, okay? And I'll tell you, one of the most important things that I think needs to happen here, and I think a lot of you would agree, the Stanley County School Board needs to communicate with county commissioners and the people in the county more effectively and with more transparency. Period. Some of the finger pointing that's been done to our county commissioners with regard to how much money they're letting into the school system. Let me tell you this about the county commissioners, folks. The county commissioners are tasked with safeguarding your hard-earned tax dollars, okay? They have an entire county to take care of here, all right? And all of that costs money. So they're tasked with safeguarding your tax dollars so we don't go spending it on stupid stuff, all right? And with the history of the school boards and what this school board has done, I know that I would be very hesitant in throwing a blank check to the school board without assurances that the taxpayer's on board with whatever it is the school board is doing with that money, okay? Has anybody ever tried to read a financial report from the Stanley County School Board? It's like unsolved mysteries, folks, okay? And if the people can't understand it, then how can they endorse it? How can they know what's going on? And if the plans of the board are withheld from the people until the last possible minute or until after a thing is done, then how can the county commissioners open the gates to the people's money here, okay? The Stanley County School Board has a history of saying that it's going to do one thing with your money and then it does a completely different thing, things that you never agreed to, okay? Bottom line, the school board needs to change the way that it does business with the county commissioners and with the people in Stanley County, period. I think we need to review expenditures and determine any savings to the taxpayer here. This is where I would doge the heck out of our county systems, okay, and our local school systems. I would doge the hell out of everything, okay, just to see if there are any savings that can be had that benefit our school systems, our structures, logistics, our teachers, the taxpayer, okay? Doge the hell out of it. But so far, We haven't done that, but I think that that's something that we ought to do. We need to develop plans that seek to bring our school structures and systems back from the structural dead using the monetary realities of the county and of the state. Now, I got to talk about federal funding here. I don't know what the future of federal funding is as we witness this dismantling of the federal Department of Education. I think that President Trump's goal is to return education entirely to the states, folks. But I do know this, that whenever federal funds are used, there are strings attached to that money. And that's part of the reason why we're in the situation that we're in with this consolidation. In order to get the money that the board wants from the federal government with these needs-based grants that they get from the federal government, one of the criteria for receiving federal grant money is that we consolidate our schools. Now, I'm not saying that we haven't done some of these things that I suggest here. I'm not saying that it isn't being done. I'm sure we have mechanisms that do some of these things or all of these things. But when the objective is consolidation at the expense of the taxpayer, I think that we'd agree here that we need new people in positions that will safeguard our money, safeguard our communities, and our city and county schools. If we go through with this super school plan here, I suspect that it won't be too long before we're in the same place tomorrow as we are in today. Overcrowded, overtaxed, and undereducated. And incidentally, folks, when we talk about the population growth in the county and what's going to be happening in your county and in your cities over the next 10 years, that's a whole nother universe of discussion that really needs a lot of attention, okay? But moving right along here. Folks, these are just a few solutions, suggestions that we need to explore and understand. And there's more that we can explore as long as we know how things work and we're not kept in the dark. But first and foremost, any solution to doing anything to saving our community-based schools, it all begins with you folks, the people, okay? Only by your expression and determined will here can we change the direction that our schools are headed in. And more importantly, folks, our participation in the process is of the utmost importance. School board members who are decidedly in our corner and seek to do the will of the people, they need reinforcements, folks, from you, the people of the county, and from the districts that you all live in. You, the people, are the success to every equation in every issue that affects Stanley County. Now, with everything that you've heard today, folks, if you're satisfied with the status quo here, all right, if you're satisfied with the plans for super school consolidation, if you're satisfied with declining academic achievement numbers and declining public schools enrollment in favor of charter, private, and homeschooling options because your public schools don't deliver, and that's a whole other universe of discussion that we could talk about. The numbers for charter, private, and homeschool options, those numbers are increasing, folks, and it's because your public schools don't deliver, okay? Not because necessarily because of declining enrollment, but because your public schools, quite simply, aren't getting the job done. And that's not the fault of your teachers and things like that, okay? But that's a whole nother discussion that we need to talk about, okay? If you're satisfied with being on the hook for millions of dollars with no quantifiable long-term benefits here, the things that we're going to be, the problems that we're going to be facing from super schools, then the current actions of this board majority and its superintendent is the course of action for you. If you're satisfied with the way things are going, the courses of action that this board is taking behind your backs is the course of action for you. But if you want accountability, responsibility, transparency, courses of action that preserve your communities and your community schools, if you want a public school system that serves you and your families, if you want a safe and secure public school system that exists to improve your lives, your children's lives, and ultimately improves the county and the great state of North Carolina, then now is the time for you to step up, folks. Now is the time for you to become the leader that will reinforce our board members that see things like we do, and to be a representative that will truly serve the interests of the people, their communities, and their children for years to come. Now, this is going to be a hard-fought battle, folks. None of this is going to be easy, okay? And to correct our course, we must be committed and focused and willing to make the kinds of sacrifices that we need to make where they're needed. Remember, this fight for excellence in our schools, for making education great again, it doesn't end with any successes that we may have in bringing our community schools back from the structural dead. The future battles that we're going to be fighting together will involve what it is we're teaching our kids in the first place, and what we should be teaching our children in the years to come. And I have a feeling here that we're not going to have the luxury of being able to take one thing at a time here, folks. So, in closing, I will say this. The future of our county and of our republic can be found walking in the halls of our elementary schools, our middle schools, and our high schools. The question that we must ask ourselves is, what kind of future do we, the people of Stanley County, truly want? The answer to that question resides in each and every one of you. It resides in all of us. And it's up to us to articulate it, to let them know that we want to move in a different direction here, that we're prepared to do what's necessary to achieve our goals. And if you ask for my less than humble opinion, folks, and I have many, I say that we make a stand and show our children and our children's children that when the chips were down and we had the chance, by our First Amendment rights, we took the opportunity to say yes to our community schools. Let our people and our children know that we made our voices heard and that we determined our futures for what we know is absolutely possible and for what we know in our hearts is absolutely and morally right, and that we did it for them. As Ronald Reagan once said, it's time that we recognize that we are too great a nation to limit ourselves to small dreams. And in this monumental task that lays before us, folks, we must dream big and we must think outside of the box if we're to attempt this journey to restoration. If community schools are truly what you want for your county, then we must stand tall and we must stand together. And I say that we begin this journey together to restore our community schools by restoring and reopening Ridgecrest Elementary School. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you for tuning into this video, folks. I appreciate it. And, on that note, I will say that there are more presentations that will be had in the county. I'm going to be going to anywhere that the people want me to go. And in fact, tonight, this being the 6th of August of 2025, I'm going to be meeting with some people to decide where we go next. We have a Facebook page, Reclaiming Greatness in Stanley County. We have various Facebook pages for this, for Stanley County. You have the round table, you have the chatter groups, you have all those things. I'm going to be posting information to all of these pages to let you know when we're coming, all right? And that's if you want to come to some of these places and listen to what I have to say. So that information's coming, folks. But like I said, for those of you that can't make it, that's what this video is about. And it's what it's for, okay? So you can see what we're presenting to the people of Stanley County. All of this rests on you people. Only together can we change the direction that our county is going in with regard to our schools, okay? And everything else that happens in the county and in our cities. Only we can do this, all right? And we have to do it together. So that's basically the presentation that I gave on the 24th of July. And there'll be more coming, folks, I promise. Election season's coming up, folks. Remember this stuff. and just remember, with the seats that are coming, open for the next election, for the midterms, don't think that you can't do it, folks. If you believe, as we do, in our community-based school system, then I encourage you to take that step and run for a seat at this Stanley County School Board. All right? There's an at-large seat. I believe District 1 is open. So take the time to research what seats are open, where you live, and whether or not you can run. I believe the at-large seats, anybody can run for those. And I strongly encourage you to run for that seat. And I think I've talked to people that are considering it, and I hope they do, because, eventually we're going to get to a place to where we're at a point of no return, and we're going to look back and say, why didn't we do anything? I don't want to have to go through that reality, So think about what I presented here. Let me know what you think on social media. And stay tuned to my podcast, the Last Stand podcast with Wild Bill, of the Wild Bill fame, because we're going to be talking about this, I'm still going to be talking about national issues, and trust me, folks, things in this country move fast, and things in the world move fast, and it's hard to keep up. But we're going to be talking about some of the other things that are going on in the world. But I'm telling you, we're going to focus on a lot of things that happen here in the county, okay? And it's because I think we need to correct our course in where we're going. And that first course correction needs to happen on our Stanley County School Board. You can do it, folks. I have faith in all of you, in any one of you that believes in your kids and believes in your community school systems. I believe and have faith in you that you can make the change that we talk about here, okay? And more. So, thanks for tuning in, folks. I'll be in touch.